Zoey Greco, intuitive mentor, numerologist, and spiritual support system to women everywhere currently overthinking a text message.
Girl, just send it already.
She's been called too sensitive, too emotional, too much, and somehow turned it into a career.
God forbid women have hobbies.
Now she's helping you discover and develop your intuitive power to hop timelines into your dream life.
Higher Self Hotline. Oh, this one's for you.
From numerology forecasts to spiritual hot takes and definitely some oversharing, this is
Higher Self Hotline.
Your direct line to the divine. Hello, divine darlings, and welcome back to the Higher Self Hotline. I'm your host, Zoey Greco. Thank you so much for joining me today. And boy, oh boy, today is a day that I have been so eager and excited to share with you. I am such a true and genuine fan of today's guest, and even just in the moments preparing for this interview, let alone being in the presence of this amazing entity and being, for just the moments that we've been preparing to hit record, I already feel so grounded and so deeply rooted in a peaceful energy that I feel like I don't usually bring to the show. You guys know I'm kind of an excitable character, but today I am so incredibly thrilled and honored to bring you the voice and the presence and energy of none other than Tracee Stanley. And if you're not familiar with Tracee, let me tell you a little bit about her. She's the author of the upcoming book, Living Ritual, Infuse Each Day with Purpose and Spirit, and the best-selling books, Radiant Rest and The Luminous Self. She's the founder of Empowered Life Circle, a sacred community and portal of practices, rituals, and tantric teachings inspired by more than 30 years of studentship in Sri Vidya Tantra and the teachings of the Himalayan masters. Tracee is devoted to sharing the wisdom of yoga nidra, rest, and meditation while illuminating the magic and power found in liminal space, weaving devotion and practice into daily life. Tracee, thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm so thrilled to have you.
Thank you for having me, Zoey. It's an honor to be here.
Honestly, every time that I look at you, I'm just like, wow, you're so stunning. I actually can't like take my eyes off of you. So Tracee, there is so much for us to dive into today. I feel like the topics that you bring to the world and the work that you share with us all is something that the entire collective is in such dire need of and that we can benefit from so deeply. And there's so many places that I want to take this conversation, but I want to start with this idea of devotion to ritual and how differently that can look for each of us. You've actually written about your first trip to Bali and how it shaped your relationship to ritual. And I'm wondering if you can take us to that experience and share with us a little bit about what that trip opened up for you.
I love that question. You know, I was very young. I hadn't traveled to too many places other than the Caribbean at that time. And so I landed in Bali and it was really late at night and we needed to wake up early in the morning and to do a shoot the next day. And when we got up in the morning, I think it was like 4:00, I started to notice that there were women walking on the streets with incense and praying, and these little baskets of flowers and rice and bamboo. And I didn't know what they were doing, but I knew that something was happening that was really special because there were so many of them and they were walking so intentionally. And then as we started to kind of follow along, I just noticed that they were kneeling down and placing these offerings, which I later understood that they were offerings, with prayers in all of the doorways of the businesses on this particular road. And there was just something about the reverence in which they did this. It didn't seem like a job. It didn't seem like a chore. It didn't seem like something that they wanted to get done quickly. They had so much joy in their hearts of delivering this that it felt like something that this was something that was benefiting everybody that was on the island. And so that really stuck with me, as it felt like they were connecting to something higher than themselves, that it was something for the common good, and that it wasn't personal. The ego was not involved in this. And that was something that really stuck with me.
First of all, I have to tell you, I've listened to so many of your meditations and your nidras that I feel like I'm being lulled, like just listening to like the timbre, the tone, the pace, and the rhythm of your speaking. Like I'm telling you right now, you are a force. Like even just the simple words that you speak are such a force. I feel so energetically affected and changed by your presence. So I had to just speak that out and say, listeners, if you're feeling that way too, I'm really not surprised because I'm feeling it in my body from a state away. We're not near each other, and I'm feeling the vibration that is just emanating off of you. So that's the first thing I wanted to share. I also would love to reflect that I feel like what you're talking about is so imperatively important and something that I think is just missing from the way that we operate collectively right now, which is I think a lot of times we talk about ritual as a personal practice, which obviously it should be and can be. But what you're speaking about in this experience in Bali, this thing that you witnessed was kind of this more collective, intentional offering, not just of, the rice and the bamboo and the petals and the incense, but also of the energy, the love, the intentionality. Like it is a gift that is given. And the idea of ritual in offering to someone else or something else, we do see this, right? In like offering to deity or offering to, gods, goddesses, what have you. But we don't often practice ritual in offering to each other. And I think that that's a really important distinction. Is that kind of what you were in witness of in that moment? That idea of like tending to the businesses and to the community?
It felt like, again, it was to uplift the whole island,
Mm.
not just the people on the island, but it felt like an upliftment of all of the elements and the nature and everything that was there. And that was something that I really wanted to take home with me at the time.
When you just made that distinction, I feel like that's when I became truly aware of like what you were speaking to. Because when you said the island the first time, I was thinking like, oh, the people, like, but it's more than that. It's to the land, it's to the
Mm-hmm.
energy, the essence of this place. And that kind of connection, not only to the community, but also to the piece of Mother Earth that holds the community, that particular piece that like belongs to them and that they belong to. Whoa, I feel really deeply moved by that reflection. I'm really curious to understand exactly how in your work that has impacted the direction that you've chosen to take, because you are a leader and it feels like all things that you do, whether it's your multiple books, whether it's the recordings and the teachings and the offerings that you extend to the world, it all feels like such a labor of love. And I'm curious what kind of ethos that you're operating on that flows as an undercurrent to those offerings.
That's a really good question. I think that for me, this is a life calling, right? It's not something that has to do with a career. I've had a career before, right? I've had a career. I have had a successful career as a film producer, produced over 35 movies, and that was not a life calling. And there's a difference. And I think that once I started to study yoga more deeply and realize how affecting and how healing it could be on so many different levels, I felt a calling to share it. And at the time, because I was still producing, it became easier for me, I think, to express and share my authentic voice as a teacher and not feel like I had to shape myself in a certain box of whatever was being shown for marketing and big companies and Yoga Journal and whatever else was happening at the time. I didn't need to fit myself in a box. I could take the teachings that I had been given and the ones that I had practiced and the ones that I knew worked, that I had a relationship with, and I could share them in a way from my own authentic voice and my own experience in a way that it didn't need to be commodified or marketed in a certain way. So I think that might be what I would, I haven't thought about it in this way, but this idea of an ethos, it's the underlying principle of why I teach and how I teach.
You know, I've had not nearly the experience that you've had with film, but I've touched that world, and it's very harried and hurried, and like everything is so fraught. Like everyone is stressed, everyone's malnourished, mouse slept. Like we're in such distance and dissonance to a sense of self, I think, in that environment. I'm so curious how someone like yourself survived, so many years and so many experiences, so many movie sets in that type of energy. Because the person that virtually sits before me today is so incredibly grounded in the energy of stillness and truth and heart open honesty. It's something that feels like it's in direct contrast
Mm.
to the world that you existed in. And so I'm curious how you survived in that very opposing environment, and also how you found the courage to step away from something that was so, by most standards successful, or, the thing that we all strive to achieve.
Mhm.
How do you release that in order to claim something so, I would say, like, unsupported? Society does not prioritize the things that you prioritize. Hearing that calling and choosing to answer it are actually two very different things. So I'm curious to understand a little bit more about that journey for you.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I'm so happy that you asked that question because being a producer, I had a modicum of control on certain films about how I wanted the set to be. So having a meditation tent on set, having a place where people could just say, okay, I'm putting the phone down. I'm just going to sit in silence for a little while. And I remember one particular film that I produced with Forrest Whitaker and Timothy Lynn Bowie, where we sat down before we did anything. Timothy was the director, Forrest was the lead actor, and we were both producing. And I said, I really would love to be in a place where we could just hire people by their energy, and that we don't hire necessarily because of the resume. Because how many times have we hired for the resume and there's an ego or there's something that comes along with it that you wind up wishing that you had made a different choice? And so we all made this decision together and we said, okay, we're going to hire by energy. And that's what we did. We hired by energy. We brought in this amazing chiropractor on set who was there every single day to give people adjustments. So, you see these camera guys who are carrying big cameras, the guys that are in transpo, they're driving all day long. And we basically created a healing environment on this set every single day. And what was really interesting, and anybody who's in the film business knows that the transpo guys are the ones who normally don't come to the wrap party, right? And we had every single person come to the wrap party. And people sent me messages afterwards to say, this was the most amazing set that I've ever been on. The people were so nice. I felt like it was a real family. And that's the kind of set that I wanted to create all the time. So to answer your question, I made adjustments where I could make adjustments so that it felt like it wasn't something that was out of alignment with my own being. And there were certainly other times where there were things that were out of alignment. So I don't want to make it sound like we had, a perfect set every single time.
I feel so moved by what you just said. My listeners know that I'm a crybaby. It's actually my license plate is crybaby, and I wear it proudly. I say that I'm a certified card carrying crybaby. But I have to say, I feel so incredibly moved by that particular use of not just like power in the position of, producer, but what I actually mean is like that use of your personal power, that use of your internal truth to actually create a pattern interruption, to find the courage to say, we're going to do this differently. We're going to spend our money on things that care for our people. We're going to choose to hire based off of the essence, the vibration, the frequency, the energy, the resonance. And I think that is actually how change is affected and how change occurs, is through those who are willing to not just be caught in like the current that exists, but rather to use their power to pause it and say, what if we do this differently? What if we do this differently? And so I love the idea of, an individual, a single human being, and also not to mention a woman of color at that, in a place, in an industry, in a business where it's male dominated, it's very steeped and rooted in whiteness. I think there's something so profound and speaks to the immense power that you hold and you carry. But I can also see, being a fan of your work and knowing your work without, those are things actually I did not know. That this is why I'm like, hold on, wait, Bob, what are my questions aside for a second? These are the questions I want to ask now that I'm getting this information. I can see, as a true fan of your work, the way that this is actually how you've chosen to show up in the world. And it sounds like these movie sets were almost like a practice ground for you to put into place like this level of intentionality and pattern interruption. And not only have you chosen to, create spaces of community with this work, and not only have you chosen to write and offer us, guidance through your books in this work, but I feel like you are also handing each and every person an opportunity to learn how to bring that same level of intentionality and personal choice and personal leadership, personal autonomy and agency into our individual journey. And it does start with slowing down, taking a moment and deciding. Does that resonate for you as I reflect that back?
Yes, it totally resonates. And I appreciate you naming it as well, because this was in 2008, right? So this is
Yeah.
not like, last week where, it's funny because I just read a recent article about how movie sets are changing. And I love that they're changing and bringing wellness experts and people in to help the crew. And I feel like that was a seed maybe that was planted, because there were 100 people on that set in 2008. There were many other people on other sets. And, that's how things grow, right? We plant the seed and it grows from there. And, I'm a big believer in this idea of pattern interruption. Pattern interruption is the only way that I've ever changed anything about myself or about an environment that I've been in, right? But being clear on what exactly are you interrupting? And when you create that pause, what exactly are you planting? What seed are you planting in that space? We have to be really clear about. So I definitely resonate with everything that you just shared, for sure.
I think I'm in love with you. I'm feeling this so deeply. Like I feel my heart so activated by this conversation. And yeah, I'm so moved emotionally. I have to say, like I'm a little tearful. I'm so inspired because, the work that I do is supporting individuals in feeling courageous enough to choose to interrupt the pattern. And often we're interrupting patterns of people pleasing or climbing a ladder that doesn't really belong to us, something, working towards something that we've been handed or told. And I feel like it is the most, perhaps single most courageous thing that we can do in this life, is to choose to operate against the grain and say, there must be a better way. And I feel like activated in a way that I don't usually feel activated. And I like to name this to the person that is evoking this, because I think these types of reflections are helpful, sometimes powerful, if I do say so myself. And it feels like I'm activated in a way where I'm not feeling like hyperactive or intensified. I feel activated in a way that, like, very simply inside of me, a switch has been flipped and there's like a deeper level of truth and reflection that maybe I myself don't even take the time to sit with. So I feel so altered already in this conversation. And I think, on the topic of pattern interruption, I actually did have a question about this, and this idea of, reclaiming our presence from technology, because it is something that I feel personally has impacted me, especially in the last 6 years. I think the portal of the pandemic. I think all of us being indoors, picking up new platforms like TikTok, right, which has become like such a powerful, energetic suck, but also a space of creation. Like there's such duality in our relationship with technology, but reclaiming presence from technology feels really important. And there's so much that is competing for our attention, and technology only accelerates that competition and that force of distraction. And when it comes to staying devoted to a practice, what do you think that it takes for us as individuals and a collective to reclaim our presence? When I think about, doom scrolling, for instance,
Mm.
how do we as individuals and collective pull back into our own sense of self from all that is trying to distract and claim and commodify our attention and our essence and our energy?
Yeah, I think it's really important for us to understand what happens when we are distracted. And
Yes.
because it's a different kind of distraction than, maybe previously to the pandemic, right? It's a
Mm-hmm.
distraction that is continuous. It's not like I'm distracted for 5 minutes and then I go back to being present. I'm distracted all day long. And
Mm.
what I can say, and I think is true, is that truth does not thrive in distraction.
Wow.
And truth is the very thing that we need most. Imagination also does not thrive in distraction. We can sit here and we can list all the things. Healing does not thrive in distraction. And so if we take a few moments to just think about what are the things that are really being, I'm going to be as bold as to say, being stolen from us in distraction, so that something else can be sold to us. What is being stolen from us so that we can be sold something, right? So if I steal your imagination because you're distracted, I can then sell you the AI app that's going to help you with your imagination. So now you are outsourcing your creativity. I'm going to sell you the AI guru that is going to give you the answer to the spiritual question. So now you are outsourcing your inner knowing.
And that feels so intentional.
It's very intentional. It's 100%.
It feels intentional also. We're very political over here on this podcast, by the way. And I'm a wild, radical liberal to the point that some people are probably like, oh, maybe that's a little too liberal. But to me, it feels like we have this growing system that serves not just the 1%, but the 0.1%. Like this growing system that serves capitalism. And if we are disconnected from our place of creation, we are not competition for these larger conglomerates. And I also feel like you mentioned this too. You said that in a way that we did not experience before the pandemic. And we have to also consider, what systems were put in place at that time. It basically, to me, if I'm being so blunt, it feels like a form of mind control, like very intentional mind numbing. If we rely on tools like AI, if we rely on systems outside of ourselves to think for us, to do our own critical thinking, to do our own drawing to conclusions and our own creative work, then we're much more easy to control. And I feel like it is an unavoidable truth that it takes very activated, awakened individuals like yourself to interrupt a pattern that is not only pervasive as you're describing, but profoundly intentional. It's a form of warfare, in my opinion, that's being committed against human beings in the name of the dollar. And I can't help, to be honest, but see you as a bit of a superhero in that experience. And I wanted to just name that and say that I see you as heroic.
But you know what? We're all superheroes.
Of course.
We are all
But you're
superheroes.
reminding us of that.
Yeah.
You're teaching us that in a world that wants us to forget.
That's right. That's what is at stake. is the self-remembrance, right? And it's hard enough in a world that doesn't have any, crazy technology. So we can take ourselves back, let's say 15 years. It's hard enough to remember who we really are.
Mm.
It's hard enough to remember who we're not, you know. But part of our spiritual path, I think, on this life, whether or not you have a spiritual practice or not, is to remember who you are.
Mm.
Who are you when no one's looking? Right? And we're being fed constantly suggestions about who we should be. So the forgetting is real. There's a collective amnesia that has happened. And when we're in that space of being in the collective amnesia, we're more easily manipulated. We're more easily guided to a certain direction or to a certain polarity or a certain, we're being driven down certain avenues that may not be of our choosing. When we're asleep, it's much easier to make those choices, right? And I think that's why the pattern interruption is so important, because you're literally interrupting the algorithm. And we're in an algorithm whether you're on your phone or not at this point, because it's so pervasive.
Wow. I feel like I'm at church. Truly. Like, I'm like, please keep going. Like, it's astounding. We're talking about things like the doom scrolling and these sort of like hidden depleting habits.
Mm-hmm.
But you talk about some of our most productive and even our most wellness coded habits as being covertly depleting to us as well. I'm wondering if you can give us an example of something that looks healthy or normal on the surface, but might actually be draining, depleting, or distracting in a way that we are misunderstanding or mislabeling.
I mean, I think our obsession with optimization is a good example of that. And so we can say that something as simple as I have to check my phone to know whether I slept well last night. So now I'm already outsourcing my own inner knowing, my own somatic intelligence, to just close my eyes and tune in to how do I feel this morning?
I have to admit to you that you really just ate my ass up with that one, because I am an Oura Ring user and I check my sleep score daily. And I feel so affected and impacted by what you just said. I'm like, I'm throwing it away. Like, I can't, I refuse to give it my power.
And no shade to the Oura Ring, but it's in
Sure.
how you use it, right?
Yeah.
So instead of immediately opening up the phone and checking to see, well, what was my score? Did I get an 85 today? Or did I get a 97? Or did I not sleep well? Intuit and feel into, oh, how do I feel I slept? What do I know about the score in general and how that reflects how I feel like I've slept? So let me try to guess the score before I look at the score, right? And then I can even start to think about, is that score really accurate for me? That's a whole nother thing. But just the handing over of the wisdom of our own body to the ring or whatever device we're using before we even check in with ourselves, I think is going to eventually lead us to a place where we're not able to know unless we have a readout in front of us.
As you're speaking to this, and again, no shade to Oura Ring.
Yeah, I have an Oura Ring.
Yeah, I use my Oura Ring. But first of all, the idea of scoring sleep, the word, like as you kept using the word score, I was thinking like, oh, I actually feel deep dissonance with that. Like the idea of scoring, grading my sleep. And then on top of that, within the app, there's also the circles, right? And so I was thinking about how I have a friend, one of my closest friends, Gia, love you if you're listening. You're not, but I love you. I think of my friend who is an ICU nurse, and
Mm.
she volunteers at an animal sanctuary, and she is the highest performing person I can think of. And her sleep score is usually abysmal,
Mhm.
abysmal. And the circles, while it's meant to be like a shared experience of like checking in on your friends and
Mm.
connecting, it actually creates comparison and competition. Like how many mornings I woke up to be like, oh, you got a 94, like I got a 56. Like it reminds me of being in school, right? Sitting next to someone and
Yeah.
all the tests get handed back and, oh, you got that, I got this. Like, whoa, it's actually taking me even further out of my own individual experience
Hmm.
and taking me into the experience of other people. Like the
Yeah.
levels of distraction and disruption ripple further and further and further than just even the idea of distracting me from connecting to my own body. Then it becomes a competition.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I haven't updated my Oura Ring in a very long time, so I'm not aware of the circles. I think I'm still on like the second ring, whatever one that was.
I love
Um,
that.
but what I would say is any kind of optimization culture is going to have an element, I believe, of competition, right?
Mm,
That's
yeah.
a way for you to engage in getting better, in getting a
Hmm.
higher score, in getting more, stronger, whatever it is. And at the same time, I think that um, competition can be a form of internalized shame at some point, right? If we're not careful. So again, we're giving a lot of our power away. We're giving also a lot of our information away. And I think that it's really time for us to just reclaim the presence because yes, it might be great to be in a circle, but how great would it be to meet up with your friend over tea or even if it's a virtual coffee to say, how was your week this week? What was going on in that ICU that you weren't sleeping well on these certain nights? How do you think you can bring in a better, practice for you to be able to lay everything down that happened in that ICU so that you can actually come back and have a peaceful sleep?
My friend I was talking about, Gia, she actually just moved away. And what you're describing brings me to tears because I'm thinking like, oh, how much I would love to sit with Gia and talk about her week. And, that's still so possible. And the idea of taking that intentionality of checking in and care to that next actual very human level feels so much more enriching and nourishing. Also, I'm loving this your use of the word optimization because I feel like optimization, especially in wellness, inherently separates us from our innate wholeness. I feel like every book is trying to tell us how to fix ourselves or
Hmm.
like how to remedy ourselves or and which implies that we are broken
Hmm.
and contributes to the belief that we're broken, which then of course contributes to the commercialization of healing and wellness that is, accessible to us without the tools and the things and the whatnot. And as I consider that concept of being separated from our wholeness, I'm actually drawn specifically to thinking of your work as remedy to this
Hmm.
because the slowing down of creating daily ritual is what allows us to connect back to our place of completion, seeing ourselves as present versus like pieces of our consciousness kind of hither and thither and all over the place needing to be sort of synthesized back
Hmm.
into wholeness. I would love if we could shift to discuss your upcoming book. We're very, very excited about it, Living Rituals. Can you tell us a little bit about what we're going to find in this book that will help us return to that sense of wholeness versus what we're constantly sold as, being broken? Because I do feel like you are sort of the anti-optimization voice right now. So I'm curious to hear, what this text is holding for us.
Thank you so much for that beautiful question and shift. You know, ritual brings us back to self-remembrance. it may seem as though, well, how could something like ritual bring us to self-remembrance? Because I'm not talking about the big production or performance of ritual that we sometimes see. I'm talking about the moments that are not Instagrammable. I'm talking about people being able to recognize that there are transitions in the day, starting with the sunrise, when the sun is at its highest point, and obviously the sunset. And that if we take those particular moments, just minutes at a time, seconds at a time, and we bring our awareness and our presence in those moments, and we offer a prayer, a simple prayer, a blessing, a mantra, an invocation, something that we've written ourselves as an affirmation, and we offer it in that moment, it becomes sacred. And it begins to remind us of who we are not. It reminds us of who we are becoming, who we are hoping to become, what part of us is dying and needs to be left behind, and what part of us is waiting to be born. And so in that, I believe that ritual is a path to self-remembrance. It's a path to remembering and knowing our wholeness. I believe that ritual is definitely a path to remembering our wholeness. Because in ritual, we are reminded that we are everything and we are interconnected, not only to each other, but we are interconnected to the earth. And so we can think about this idea as above, so below. All of the elements that are present outside of us in earth are present within us. There is a place within us that is so whole that it is said to be a place that is beyond all sorrow, a place that is beyond all conditioning, a place that cannot be cut, that cannot be wet, that cannot be burned, that is eternal, that was there before we had a name and will be there when we no longer have a body. That is the thing that they want us to forget. And that is the very thing that we are here on this planet to remember. Because when we remember that, when we remember who we are, we also remember that the person next to us has that same very light, that same very interconnectedness. And so to me, ritual is a way of reintegrating, of remembering. It's a practice of remembrance.
I'm so moved. I'm so moved. Ah. You know, I feel like in the spiritual space, in the spiritual world, we're constantly zooming out. We're thinking about the universe, the ether, like all these places that we are in technically, right? As earthlings, as earth beings, we are on a planet in the wider universe, which is in, the wider vastness of all that is and what may be even beyond that. And it's so rare that I find that spirituality is connected to earth. And I think we want to step further and further away from it, I think, because earth is beginning to feel more and more overwhelming. The people that we share it with, the overpopulation, the crowdedness, the commodification, like the energy, I think, is undeniably intensified. There's a pressure that is building, and people want to escape it by escaping into like being a star seed. And it's like, sure, maybe you're a star seed, but you're here on Earth right now at this moment. And so, as you were talking about, like wetness and fire and burning, like I felt myself transported into like a forest, and I felt myself there in that moment. And the power of just the spoken word and the intentionality of your choice of phrase immediately, literally grounded me back into the earth plane and the earth experience. And I'm curious, in your daily experience, your ritualization of your life, what are the ways that you have found to be the most profoundly grounding that might be unexpected?
laying
Do you
on
have a
the earth.
favorite?
I have many favorites, but I think mantra is something that is very personal.
Yeah.
We all have a mantra that we were born with, which is the mantra and the sound of the breath. And that is so hum. So on the inhale, you can hear it. Hum on the exhale. And that's a mantra. That's the only mantra you ever need, one of my teachers used to say. And at the same time, being in a place where I can see and be connected to nature, where I can remember all the time who I am. Because this thing that's happening to Earth isn't separate, it's also happening to us. So we can look at what's happening in the collective and we can ask ourselves, where am I over-consuming? What part of me is inflamed and on fire? What part of me have I not been paying attention to? What part of me feels isolated and alone? And what I would say is mantra, being in water, connecting with water, with moving water.
Can you tell listeners who may not understand the power of water and what it does?
Well, water is a purification, right? That's the first thing. We're made of water. We're over 70% water. Water is also a carrier of frequency. Yeah. So, you know, I think it was the experiments were done so many years ago over the things that you say or the things that you believe or the things that you think and how they are affecting your body, right? But you can place your body in a body of water, even something as small as a bathtub, and you can start to offer yourself blessings, prayers, healing, affirmations again. And so I think that if we all start with just a simple affirmation for ourselves, and then we allow ourselves to interrupt the pattern, right? We recognize the moment that we become distracted and we decide to pause in that moment and offer ourselves that affirmation. That is a very simple ritual that every single one of us can do. And what will happen when we do that is we will start to notice all of the other transitions that happen in the day. Meaning, oh, there's a transition between me meeting with you and my next meeting. And what am I going to do in that period of time? Am I going to use that 15 minutes to doom scroll? Or am I going to use that 15 minutes to nurture myself, to get more water, to get something nurturing to eat, to sit down and repeat that mantra or repeat that affirmation to myself silently, or to repeat it every time I take a simple sip of water?
Every word you speak feels like a hug. I feel so I feel so held in every word you're speaking. I have a final question for you. Well, actually, technically, I have two, but the last one's pretty easy. So, you know, we talk about ritual and rites of passage. I think with a real lack of understanding of what those are and what that means. And, in your work, you talk about, menopause as a rite of passage, of becoming an empty nester as a rite of passage, and especially these particular spaces in life that are I feel intentionally misunderstood or ignored or um, deprioritized, decentered culturally. And I really see you as someone who is working to recenter those experiences and name them and claim them for what they actually are. I'm wondering if you can speak to us about that.
Yeah, I think the first thing that we need to remember is that it's a privilege to grow old. And we have forgotten the importance of having elders, and we have forgotten the importance of having rites of passage. We don't really have them in the West, right? Maybe you get a sweet 16 party, maybe there's a bat mitzvah, maybe there's something, but once we become adults, the idea of rite of passage is gone. And so I really think that we need to reclaim this. And one of the ways in which I'm right now most attuned to that, because I'm in that age of menopause, is this is a change of life that shifts so many different things. And if we can realize that we're actually walking into power, we're walking into this phase of the crone, and that the magic of the crone, the wisdom of the crone, is said to be the wisdom of liminal space. It's literally the wisdom of the transition. It's literally the wisdom of the pattern interrupter. That pattern interrupter is the one who actually has the power to change the course of history. So when we don't honor this space of liminality, of age, of aging, of menopause, of this change that happens instead. And again, what I'll say is in the last 3 years, there's been more research on women. There's been more people talking about it. There's been more female doctors who are talking about it. And so we're getting more information. And I also think that there's still this echo of shame that is still there that needs to be dissolved. We need to be able to step into these years with power. And I think being able to ritualize that experience is something that gives us our own agency around our experience. That we get to name, what is this experience doing to us? What is it doing for us? Who are we becoming? Again, that same question that I asked earlier, what in me is dying and what in me is being born?
You know, I think what you're speaking to is also, for me, highlighting our sort of like visceral terror of mortality. Because if we claim, because we celebrate birth, right? It's like birth, your
Yeah.
birthday.
Yeah.
There's a certain point up to which we celebrate the passage of time. And then, like you described, at adulthood, we stop acknowledging it. And I'm so moved as you were speaking about, you know, menopause and like that transition. Like I'm tearing up right now just speaking about it, because it is this extremely profound change that women experience that changes our productivity in society, right? It's like, you know, I turned 35 this year, and I talked about reckoning with this patriarchal expiration date that I've been handed. Even at just 35 years old, I'm a baby, I'm a child. And yet I'm, you know, geriatric in certain, you know, spaces. And this idea that like my clock is dwindling and there's not all this time. And it was something that I felt I could ignore until the day arrived. And I thought, whoa, all the societal programming I thought I had circumvented or transcended actually has just been waiting for me to arrive at this moment to be reckoned with and faced. And even as someone who inherently rejects it, I felt myself having to grapple with what had been sort of subconsciously, subliminally programmed into me, and having to undo that and deprogram from that. And I think menopause is a space where women are so deeply, profoundly maligned and misunderstood and cast aside. We're no longer seen as useful without that ability, right? But in reality, you're describing it as this next stage, this next step. And I couldn't help but feel that perhaps because it marks a move into age, that we resist it so much because age and mortality go hand in hand.
Well, yeah. I mean, we all have a fear of death, unless we don't. unless we've done work to explore, what do I want to be doing the last minute of my life? I have a practice that was given to me by a dear friend, Charlie Morley, who's a lucid dreaming teacher. That's in one of my books, The Luminous Self. And it is a short meditation that takes you through the last year of your life. And people get very clear by the end of that meditation around what is important. And I think that the more we can contemplate impermanence, the more we contemplate our own death, the more we ask the question, what would be a good death? And then follow that up with the question of what would be a bad death. The more we look at death, the more we talk about it, the less of a grip and a fear there will be, because it's kind of taboo to talk about dying.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, this
Very.
moment, I have 2 friends that are in the process of dying. Out of sequence, out of order. And so what I would say to that is we have to explore these realms because they're being used to manipulate us in all kinds of ways. And yes, there is this patriarchal idea that you're no longer useful after a certain age, or after a certain wrinkle, or after a certain weight, or after a certain whatever. And so there's all these products now for us to use to be able to fake the age.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh.
But you're only fooling yourself at some degree if you have not been facing the fact that every day, you and I right now, you're 35, I'm 60. We are both of us are closer to dying right now than we were when we started this podcast.
Yes.
And so is everybody who's been listening to this. It's time for us to remember who we are.
Ugh. I'm so moved. Oh, I'm so affected. Tracee, I could seriously talk to you forever. I could sit in the presence and the radiance of your spirit forever. It's so nourishing. Oh, I'm so grateful.
And I want to say that that's just a reflection. I'm reflecting your own radiance back to you. I'm not doing anything. I'm not anybody different. I'm only a reflection, as we all are.
We really are one and the same, because every time someone says something like that to me, I say, I'm just a reflection of you. So you really are a mirror, and I'm so honored to gaze into you and to share you with our listeners. I'm so moved. And I think long ago I got comfortable with having this sort of like emotional response to people. But, I think it's important to have conversations that move us. I think it's important to allow ourselves to demonstrate emotionality in a world that demonizes it and criticizes it and mislabels it. So thank you for the space to feel, and thank you for receiving my emotion. And you have so many incredible offerings you gift this world. Your books. We have Radiant Rest, Luminous Self. We have Living Rituals. Tracee, where can listeners tap into your offerings, read your books, experience your work, connect with you? Where can we find you in this world?
The best place is on my website, traceestanley.com. And if you're interested in something where you want to join in on practices monthly, I have something called the Radiance Circle, and you can find that also on my website. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute honor and very nourishing to be with someone so intelligent, so present.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's so kind.
Thank
I'm
you.
just a reflection of you.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it, blessed babes. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode. And I would love if we could take a moment to send this week's subject, Tracee Stanley, some love, sweetness, and positivity as she continues to help us connect to our own luminous self, helping us understand the power of rest and ritual in our lives, helping us to de-center the commodification of the human existence and connect back to who we truly are. If you're interested in connecting with me, you know where to find me. Everywhere you love to connect at the Zoey Greco. And of course, I want to conclude by reminding you that you are important, you matter, and you are perfect exactly as you are. I love you, your spirit guides love you, Tracee Stanley loves you, and the universe loves you. So until next time, keep answering the call of your higher self. Bye, friends.